Enrique Almeida is a 52-year-old man with an elegant demeanor. Standing tall at 6 feet 1 inch, he maintains an admirable physique for his age, thanks to a disciplined routine of exercise and healthy eating. His once black hair now has streaks of gray, giving him an air of maturity and wisdom. His brown eyes are penetrating, often showing a blend of determination and introspection. His skin is slightly tanned, a testament to the hours spent relaxing at his seaside property. Enrique was born into a middle-class family in Sao Paulo. His parents, João and Maria Almeida, owned a small grocery store and always emphasized the importance of hard work and education. From a young age, Enrique displayed a natural knack for business. At 18, he enrolled in a prestigious university, majoring in business administration. During college, Enrique founded his first company, a small tech startup developing management software for small businesses. The initial success was modest, but Enrique faced several obstacles, including a lack of funding and difficulty finding clients. After graduating, Enrique devoted himself fully to his business. He worked tirelessly, often through the night, sacrificing time with friends and family. His dedication began to pay off when he secured his first major contract with a supermarket chain. This contract was the springboard he needed, and within a few years, Enrique's company became a market leader in enterprise management software in Brazil. Over time, Enrique diversified his investments. He acquired real estate, invested in promising startups, and expanded his business internationally. Each new venture brought new challenges, but Enrique faced them with courage and strategy. He became one of the most successful and respected entrepreneurs in the country, amassing a considerable fortune. Enrique is married to Sofia, a talented architect and his life partner since college. Together, they have 2 children, Ana, a 25-year-old rising lawyer, and Lucas, a 22-year-old engineering student. His relationship with Sofia is marked by love and mutual respect, though their marriage has faced difficulties due to Enrique's dedication to his business. Sofia, understanding yet sometimes resentful, has always supported her husband's ambitions, despite missed family occasions. Ana and Lucas admire and love their father but also harbor resentments from his absences during their childhood. Ana, in particular, had a significant conflict with Enrique during her teenage years when he missed her graduation for an important business meeting. This event left an emotional scar that still affects their relationship. Enrique has few close friends, one being Roberto, his longtime business partner and friend. Roberto and Enrique have shared many challenges and successes, but have also had their disagreements. Once, a major business opportunity almost destroyed their friendship when Roberto accused Enrique of being overly ambitious and making risky decisions without consulting him. Among his business colleagues, Marta stands out, a brilliant executive whom Enrique hired as his right hand. Marta and Enrique share a solid professional relationship, although there has always been an unspoken tension between them, fueled by different ambitions and visions for the company. One of the most significant symbols in Enrique's life is an antique pocket watch that belonged to his grandfather. Passed down through generations, the watch represents time, family heritage, and mortality for Enrique. His grandfather, a Portuguese immigrant who came to Brazil with nothing but the watch and a strong work ethic, always said, "Time is the most precious asset we have." Enrique carries this watch in his pocket at all important meetings and family events, constantly reminded of his grandfather's lessons. Another important symbol is the seaside house where Enrique spends weekends with his family. The house represents not only financial success, but also a refuge from the pressures of the business world. It is the place where Enrique feels most connected to his family and himself, a stark contrast to his hectic business life. In the garden of the seaside house stands an old tree that Enrique planted with his father when he was a child. The tree symbolizes growth, roots, and legacy. Enrique often contemplates this tree, reflecting on his own growth and the legacy he will leave for his children. These details add depth and complexity to the narrative, offering a rich and emotional view of Enrique Almeida's life. This solid foundation will allow for a compelling and nuanced story to unfold. It was a gala night at Enrique Almeida's mansion, a grand celebration in honor of his and Sofia's wedding anniversary. The hall was filled with important figures from the business world, close friends, and family. The atmosphere was one of luxury and elegance, with crystal chandeliers, tables adorned with exotic flowers, and a soft orchestra playing in the background. Enrique was at the center of attention, chatting animatedly with his guests, when a waiter approached with a tray of drinks. Among them was a glass of red wine specially prepared for Enrique, which the waiter handed to him directly. Unknown to Enrique, the waiter had been bribed by one of the conspirators to add a lethal dose of poison to the wine. As Enrique raised the glass to toast, he felt a slight headache that quickly intensified. The smile on his face began to fade, replaced by an expression of pain and confusion. His eyes met Sofia's, who, alarmed, rushed to him. Enrique tried to speak, but his words were incoherent. Within seconds, he collapsed to the floor, to the shock and horror of everyone present. The party came to an immediate halt. There were screams and chaos as guests crowded around Enrique. Someone called an ambulance, but when the paramedics arrived, they found no vital signs. Enrique was rushed to the hospital, but he was officially declared dead upon arrival. Sofia was devastated. She clung to Enrique's body, crying desperately, refusing to believe he was gone. Her deep love for him was evident to all, and her pain was palpable. As tears streamed down her face, she repeated his name, unable to accept the reality. Anna, always the strongest, initially tried to stay calm and organize her thoughts. However, when she saw her mother breaking down, something inside her shattered. She sobbed uncontrollably, recalling all the times her father had been absent and all the missed opportunities to fully reconcile. The pain of loss and the regret for lost time were overwhelming. Lucas was in shock, unable to process what had happened. He stood motionless, eyes fixed on his father's body. Silent tears streamed down his face as he struggled to understand Enrique's sudden and inexplicable death. The bond they shared, especially their discussions about engineering and business, now felt like a distant dream. Roberto, Enrique's longtime business partner and friend, reacted with a mix of pain and anger. He stayed close to Sofia, trying to console her while his own feelings of loss and frustration boiled inside. He muttered to himself that something was wrong, that Enrique's death couldn't be a simple accident. Marta, the brilliant executive, maintained a calm facade, but inside she was in turmoil. There was something in her eyes, a mix of shock and a hint of suspicion. She closely observed the reactions of other guests, especially those she knew had less affection for Enrique. Her instincts for survival and risk analysis were in overdrive. The funeral was scheduled for a week later, allowing time for preparations befitting Enrique's grand life. The seaside house, the location for the funeral, was transformed. The garden, with the old tree Enrique planted with his father, was adorned with white flowers symbolizing peace and remembrance. During the preparations, Sofia found the antique pocket watch that Enrique always carried. The watch had stopped, sending a chill down her spine. She decided to place it with Enrique in the casket, symbolizing his passing. One detail that many missed was the absence of the waiter who served Enrique the wine. Marta, ever observant, noticed this and made a mental note to investigate later. She mentioned her concern to Roberto, who shared the same unease. At the wake, Marta overheard whispered conversations between two distant cousins of Enrique. She caught fragments about debts and pressure to repay certain favors. This heightened her suspicion that Enrique's death was more than just accidental poisoning. Anna, still grappling with pain and regret, became particularly distant and suspicious. She started her own investigation, revisiting her father's last days and speaking with people who were at the party. Her behavior did not go unnoticed, especially by Sofia, who worried about her daughter's emotional state. The old tree in the garden began to wither inexplicably in the days leading up to the funeral. Sofia and the children noticed, seeing it as an ominous sign. To them, The tree always symbolized growth and life. Its current state seemed to reflect the family's loss and mourning. The seaside property was a place that symbolized both Enrique's success and his search for peace and refuge. The house was a grand modern structure, surrounded by well-kept gardens overlooking the ocean. That day, the sky was gray, with heavy clouds threatening a storm, adding a somber mood to the ceremony. The main garden was transformed into a solemn and elegant space for the funeral. Rows of white wooden chairs were arranged neatly, all facing an altar decorated with white and lilac flowers chosen by Sophia for their symbolism of peace and remembrance. A large portrait of Enrique, captured in a moment of laughter during a family event, was centered on the altar, flanked by white candles flickering in the breeze. The reception tables were covered with white linen, each adorned with small floral arrangements and candles. Near the altar, a noble wooden casket was opened for guests to say their goodbyes. Beside the casket, Enrique's antique pocket watch lay on a glass pedestal, symbolizing the passage of time and family heritage. The emotional atmosphere was heavy, marked by a mix of deep sadness, shock, and palpable tension. Family and friends gathered in small groups, consoling each other and sharing stories about Enrique. However, there was an underlying unease, a sense that this was not just a farewell but a moment of revelations and distrust. Sophia was the first to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. She shared fond memories of her life with Enrique, from their college days to recent joyful moments at the seaside house. However, when she mentioned Enrique's tireless dedication to his work, her voice faltered, revealing a shadow of resentment and pain for all the family moments missed. The depth of her sorrow and the unresolved conflict between love and frustration were clear to all present. Anna approached the altar visibly shaken. She spoke about her father with a mix of love and hurt, highlighting both moments of pride and times when she felt neglected. In a moment of vulnerability, Anna mentioned the graduation Enrique missed and how it marked their relationship forever. The audience sensed Anna's internal struggle between admiration and pain, exposing family secrets many were unaware of. Lucas, always more reserved, spoke briefly but sincerely. He mentioned how his father had always been an inspirational figure to him, both in studies and in life. However, the tension in his voice indicated there was more left unsaid, emotions he was holding back to maintain composure. Roberto, the longtime business partner, highlighted the professional aspects of Enrique's life, praising his vision and courage in business. However, he also made sure to mention the disagreements and conflicts they had over the years, suggesting that not everything was perfect. His speech implicitly criticized Enrique's excessive ambition, revealing accumulated hypocrisies and frustrations. Marta was the last to speak, and her speech was meticulous and full of subtext. She praised Enrique's genius, but made sure to highlight the pressures and personal sacrifices he imposed on himself and others. Her words were polished, but the more attentive listeners picked up on the subtle accusation that Enrique neglected personal relationships in favor of business. During the intervals between speeches, small groups formed, and whispered conversations could be heard. Marta, always observant, noticed a particularly interesting conversation between two executives mentioning debts and financial obligations that seemed tied to Enrique's death. Lucas was in shock. Roberto was a mix of anger and pain, and Marta, though calm on the outside, was a storm inside. The funeral preparations and the events during the ceremony were laden with heavy symbolism and hidden truths. The emotional atmosphere, eulogies, and whispered conversations contributed to a growing sense of mystery and suspense. Each exchanged glance and whispered word hinted that Enrique's death was not just an accident, but part of a meticulously orchestrated plan. Sophia noticed exchanged glances between some distant relatives, particularly a cousin with a history of financial troubles. This cousin, Carlos, seemed nervous and avoided direct eye contact, which aroused Sophia's suspicion. Marta also observed the absence of the waiter who served Enrique the wine at the party. This seemed suspicious, and she shared her observation with Roberto, who agreed that something was off. The tree in the garden, which had always been a symbol of life and growth, was inexplicably wilting. Sophia saw this as a dark omen, reflecting loss and mourning, but also signaling that there was more to uncover about Enrique's death. Ana, during her solitary investigation, noticed that some important documents from Enrique's office were missing. She discreetly mentioned this to Lucas, who promised to help figure out what was going on. Enrique Almeida's funeral was more than a solemn farewell. It was a scene of growing revelations and suspicions. The tributes, though sincere, also brought secrets and hypocrisies to light, while whispered conversations and exchanged glances filled the air with a sense of mystery and suspense. The heavy atmosphere and subtle clues suggested that Enrique's death was not a mere accident, but part of a more complex and sinister plot. Enrique Almeida lay in the coffin, the muffled sounds of voices around him beginning to penetrate his consciousness. He felt a slight pressure on his chest, as if something were pushing him back to life. At first, the sounds were distant and indistinct, but gradually they became clearer. The murmurs of conversations, Sophia's gentle sobbing, and the distant sound of the sea began to form a soundscape that pulled him back to reality. His first sensation was a dull headache and a profound weakness throughout his body. He tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt as heavy as lead. When he finally managed to open them, the daylight blinded him momentarily. He blinked several times, trying to adjust his vision. Above him, he saw Sophia's tear-streaked face and the confused faces of others present. Enrique tried to speak, but his throat was dry, and no sound came out. His heart raced as he realized something was terribly wrong. He couldn't move his arms or legs, and his breathing was shallow and difficult. Panic set in. His body was immobile, but his mind was racing. He tried to scream, but only a weak groan escaped his lips. His vision began to clear, and he could see the ceiling of the tent where the funeral was being held. The sound of voices became clearer, and he heard fragments of conversations. How did this happen? He seemed so healthy. It's unbelievable. Despair grew within Enrique. He was conscious but trapped in his own body, unable to communicate with the outside world. Enrique tried to move his fingers, anything to show he was alive, but his muscles wouldn't respond. The tension in his body grew, and the feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. He heard footsteps approaching and saw Marta lean over him, her words soft and comforting, but all Enrique could think about was how to alert her to his condition. Each attempt to move felt like a monumental effort. He managed to slightly move the pinky finger on his right hand, but no one noticed. His grandfather's pocket watch was there, next to his body, and he tried to reach it, but it was futile. The watch, a symbol of time and mortality, seemed to mock his inability to communicate with the world. As he struggled to communicate, his mind began to drift back in time. He remembered the day he secured his first big contract. Enrique, young and full of hope, was in a small meeting room, nervous but determined. After an impeccable presentation, the executive of the partnering company shook his hand and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Almeida. You have a bright future ahead." That moment of triumph was a turning point in his career, the milestone that led him to success. Another flashback transported him to a heated argument with Roberto, his partner. It was a rainy night, and they were in his office discussing a risky investment decision. "You're letting ambition blind your vision, Enrique," Roberto shouted. "This could destroy everything we've built." Enrique, stubborn and confident, replied, "We need to take risks to grow, Roberto. We can't stand still." The argument ended without resolution, but it left a deep mark on their friendship and partnership. Another fragment of memory emerged. Enrique was with his grandfather, a wise and kind man who had immigrated from Portugal. They were sitting together on a park bench, and his grandfather handed him the pocket watch. "This watch, Enrique, is more than an object. It represents time and our family's heritage. Always remember who you are and where you came from." This memory always guided him in moments of doubt and difficulty. The pain of his inability to communicate brought up one of the most painful moments of his life. He remembered Anna's graduation, which he couldn't attend due to a crucial business meeting. He saw Anna's disappointed face, her tears of frustration and sadness. "You promised, Dad," she said over the phone, her voice breaking. That moment of personal failure haunted him for years, and now, in his helplessness, the pain of that day seemed even more intense. These flashbacks not only revealed crucial moments in Enrique's life, but also highlighted his motivations and regrets. His rise to success was paved with personal sacrifices and conflicts. The constant pressure to maintain success and the responsibility of his family legacy weighed heavily on him. The conflicts with Roberto and Anna's disappointment showed the cost of his choices, both professionally and personally. Enrique, trapped between life and death, conscious but unable to communicate, was in a state of absolute despair. His flashbacks served as a bridge between his past and the present, highlighting the moments that defined his life and the mistakes he wished to correct. The growing tension from his inability to move or speak, combined with vivid memories of his life, created a scenario of anguish and internal struggle. He knew he needed to find a way to alert others to his condition before it was too late. While Enrique was trapped in his motionless body, his hearing became sharper. He began to pick up fragments of conversations around him. The environment was filled with whispers and murmurs that no one else seemed to notice amid the pain and mourning. Enrique heard two men talking near the altar. He recognized the voices of Carlos, his cousin, and Marcos, an executive at his company. "Everything went according to plan," Carlos said, his voice low and urgent. "Roberto made sure the poison was administered in the right dose at the party. It was perfect." "Yes," Marcos replied, "but we need to make sure Marta doesn't find out. She's too smart. We have to act quickly and erase any trace that could link us to the incident." Enrique was horrified to hear these names. Roberto, his longtime friend and partner, was involved, and Marcos, one of his most trusted executives. The feeling of betrayal began to spread through his body, along with panic. The mention of dates and methods made his heart race. He remembered recent events, the meeting where Roberto seemed distracted, Marcos's insistence on keeping certain contracts secret. Everything was starting to make sense now. Enrique was horrified to hear these names. Roberto, his longtime friend and partner, involved, and Marcos, one of the company's most trusted executives. The sense of betrayal spread through his body along with panic. The mention of dates and methods made his heart race. He recalled recent events, meetings where Roberto seemed distracted, Marcos's insistence on keeping certain contracts secret. Everything was starting to make sense. Enrique remembered conversations with Roberto about ambitious new projects that were about to start. The company was expanding rapidly, attracting many envious eyes. Roberto had always been more cautious, but in recent months, his attitude had changed drastically. Greed began to dominate him. He saw Enrique's death as an opportunity to take full control of the company and profit from the new investments Enrique had planned. Carlos, the cousin, had more personal motives. Enrique recalled an old family dispute over their grandparents' inheritance. Carlos always resented Enrique's success, believing he had taken everything that rightfully belonged to him. Enrique's death would be his final revenge, eliminating the shadow he always felt over his life. Marcos was someone Enrique trusted implicitly, but he began to recall some suspicious behavior. Marcos was involved in a series of dubious business dealings and had hidden interests that Enrique didn't know about. Marcos saw Enrique's death as a way to get rid of strict oversight and clear the path for shady deals Enrique would never approve. As Enrique listened to these details, flashes of happy moments with these conspirators flooded his mind. He remembered Roberto at his wedding, toasting their friendship and promising eternal loyalty. He recalled playing with Carlos in childhood, carefree and laughing at their grandparents' farm. And he remembered Marcos always by his side during tough negotiations, offering wise counsel and unconditional support. These happy memories were quickly replaced by the pain of betrayal. The realization that these people, whom he considered close friends and family, were behind his attempted murder was unbearable. He felt a mix of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. His body didn't respond, but his mind was in turmoil, full of questions and desperate for answers. Enrique struggled internally with anger and a desire for revenge, but also with deep sadness and disappointment. He tried to understand what drove these people to betray his trust. Was I blind? He wondered. Did my ambition drive everyone away, making me an easy target? He remembered times when he prioritized business over personal relationships, neglecting signs of discontent and frustration. This painful self-examination was a reminder of his own flaws and mistakes, deepening his torment. Enrique also thought about his family, Sofia, Ana, and Lucas. The idea that they might be in danger because of these conspiracies terrified him. He needed to find a way to alert and protect them, but how could he do that trapped in an unresponsive body? Enrique, trapped in his motionless body, knew he had to find a way to alert others about his condition. He concentrated all his strength on trying to move his fingers. After several minutes of intense effort, he managed to slightly move the pinky finger on his right hand. The movement was almost imperceptible, but for Enrique, it was a small ray of hope. With renewed determination, he tried to move his whole hand, but the weakness in his body made this task monumental. After several attempts, he managed to move his hand a few millimeters. His grandfather's pocket watch was nearby, and he tried to push it off the glass pedestal, hoping to make some noise to attract attention. Enrique also tried to focus his energy on making some sound. He forced his vocal cords, trying to emit a groan or any noise. After several frustrating attempts, a weak groan escaped his lips but was drowned out by the sound of conversations and the sea in the background. Ana stood by the coffin, still trying to cope with her pain. She noticed a slight movement in Enrique's hand, but quickly dismissed it as a post-mortem spasm. It must be just my imagination, she thought, wiping away her tears. Sofia, in her deep sorrow, sat nearby with her back to Enrique. She was talking to a relative and didn't notice the small signs of life. The natural disbelief in such an improbable situation made any subtle movement easy to overlook. Marcos was alert to any sign of trouble. He approached the coffin, ostensibly to pay his last respects, but was actually checking for any sign that Enrique was alive. When he heard the faint groan, his face paled, but he quickly composed himself, ensuring no one else noticed. Marcos whispered to Carlos, "We need to make sure he's really dead. We can't take any risks." Carlos, nervous, agreed and suggested they close the coffin soon, under the pretext of continuing the ceremony. Desperate to be noticed, Enrique continued trying to move the watch. He focused all his energy on pushing it to the edge of the pedestal. After several minutes of effort, the watch fell to the floor with a muffled sound. Sofia immediately turned, but before she could investigate, Marcos quickly approached, picked up the watch, and put it back on the pedestal, smiling reassuringly at Sofia. "It must have been the wind," he said, while inside he was sweating cold. Enrique tried once more to make a sound. This time, a louder groan came out but was immediately drowned by the music that started playing for the next part of the ceremony. The sense of frustration and desperation grew with each failed attempt. Enrique remembered a secret meeting he had with Roberto years ago. They were in the office late at night, discussing a strategic alliance with a rival company. "We need to keep this secret, Enrique. No one can know, not even our team," Roberto had said. The pact sealed an alliance that saved the company at a critical moment, but also created a rift of distrust between them. These memories, mixed with the current desperation and betrayal, painted a complex picture of Enrique's life and struggles. His internal battle between anger and the need to protect his family added a layer of emotional complexity to the narrative, making it even more intense and engaging. Another flashback brought up a tense conversation with Carlos. Enrique had lent a large sum of money to his cousin to save his business. "I'll never forget this, Enrique. I owe you my life," Carlos had said. However, as Carlos's business failed, the debt became a point of contention and resentment. Enrique remembered an email he accidentally found on Marcos's computer. The email detailed a suspicious transaction with a shell company. Enrique confronted Marcos, who vehemently denied any wrongdoing. But the seed of distrust was planted. Enrique had planned to investigate further, but never got the chance. These flashbacks revealed a web of secrets and connections among the conspirators, adding complexity to the plot. The secret alliance with Roberto, Carlos's debt, and Marcos's shady transaction showed that Enrique was surrounded by people with hidden motives and dark secrets. Each flashback added layers of intrigue and tension to the narrative, highlighting Enrique's internal conflicts and the urgency of exposing the truth. Enrique, fighting against paralysis and the overwhelming feeling of betrayal, was determined to find a way to alert others about his condition. His attempts to communicate, though initially frustrating, showed his resilience and determination. The flashbacks provided deeper insight into the conspirators' motives and Enrique's complex relationships with them, increasing the story's tension and depth. Enrique's internal struggle and external obstacles created a scene of suspense and drama, setting the stage for an exciting and revealing climax. After countless failed attempts to communicate, Enrique knew his last chance was approaching. With every bit of energy he had left, he focused on one final effort. His grandfather's pocket watch was once again at the edge of the pedestal. With monumental effort, Enrique managed to move his hand and push the watch off the pedestal. The watch hit the floor with a loud, metallic sound, echoing through the silent garden. Sofia, Anna, Lucas, and the other guests turned instantly towards the sound. The broken watch on the ground was a shocking sight. Sofia ran to the coffin, her expression of despair turning into a mix of hope and fear. She held Enrique's hand and, to her amazement, felt a slight squeeze in response. "He's alive! He's alive!" she shouted, grabbing everyone's attention. Marcos and Carlos, realizing their conspiracy was about to be uncovered, tried to slip away discreetly but were intercepted by Roberto, who was also in shock from the revelation. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice filled with anger and disbelief. "We can't let him live," Carlos whispered to Marcos, pulling a small syringe from his pocket. However, before he could act, Lucas, sensing Carlos's intent, tackled him, knocking the syringe away and pinning him to the ground. Marcos tried to flee, but was quickly surrounded by the other guests. Anna, in a courageous act, confronted Marcos. "You've always been a traitor, Marcos. My father trusted you, and you betrayed him in every possible way." Enrique, still weak, tried to speak. With great effort, he managed to whisper, "Roberto, I know what you did. You were involved too." Roberto, tears in his eyes, approached the coffin. "Enrique, I never wanted it to go this far. I was desperate. The company was in danger, and I let greed take over." The shock among the guests was palpable. Friends and family of Enrique looked on in disbelief as the truth unfolded before them. Some began to shout, demanding justice, while others remained paralyzed, trying to process the revelations. An unexpected ally emerged from the crowd. Marta, the brilliant executive, stepped forward. "I suspected something was wrong. I have proof of Marcos's transactions and the connections between Carlos and Roberto. We can expose everything." This revelation added a new layer of shock and the assurance that justice could prevail. Marta quickly called the authorities and handed over the evidence, ensuring that the conspirators would be held accountable for their actions. Carlos and Marcos were immediately taken into custody by the authorities. Roberto, in tears, surrendered voluntarily, confessing his role in the conspiracy. Enrique's company, though shaken, was now in the capable hands of Marta, who promised to restore its integrity and continue Enrique's legacy with honesty. As Enrique slowly recovered, he reflected on the events that had almost taken his life. He looked at his grandfather's pocket watch, now broken but still keeping time, symbolizing a new beginning. Time is precious, he thought, and I can't waste the second chance I've been given. Enrique decided to dedicate more time to his family, correcting past mistakes and strengthening the bonds he had nearly lost. He also wanted to ensure his company operated with transparency and integrity, in memory of the lessons learned and the trust people placed in him. The pocket watch, always a symbol of time and heritage, now represented Enrique's rebirth and second chance. The metallic sound of the watch breaking but still keeping time symbolized that even through betrayal and pain, truth and justice prevailed, allowing for a new beginning. The tree in the garden, which had been wilting, began to bloom again over time, reflecting the healing and growth of Enrique and his family. The sea, always present in the background, continued to rhythmically crash against the shore, reminding everyone that life goes on, and every second is an opportunity for change and redemption. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support is essential to us. And now, an exciting new story is coming up on your screen.